2026 stands at a terrifying geopolitical precipice. While the global giants, the US, Russia, and China, prepare for confrontation, the true spark lies in a nation already on its knees, Venezuela. Decades ago, Maria Esperanza, the mystic who foresaw 9/11 with chilling accuracy, left a cryptic warning: "It will start here." Why would a nation in ruins hold the key to the fate of the entire world? This is more than a regional conflict. It is a spiritual fuse. It is time to decode the prophecy that is finally beginning to unfold. To understand the gravity of the warning for 2026, one must first look at the woman behind the message. Maria Esperanza was often described as a modern-day mystic, a soul whose life served as a bridge between the material world and the unseen. Her legacy is not merely one of religious devotion, but of a documented, chilling connection to events that changed the course of history. Take, for instance, the spring of 1981. On the night before an assassin targeted Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square, this servant of God was shown the impending tragedy with absolute clarity. The vision was so distressing that it led to a night of agonizing prayer and the offering of personal suffering to preserve the pontiff's life. History records that the Pope survived, but few realize that the warning had been received long before the first shot was fired. Years later, a similarly haunting vision emerged regarding the New York City skyline. Long before the morning of September 11th, there were descriptions of two great towers in smoke and the terrifying precision of their implosion. These were not vague predictions. They were slices of time, witnessed in advance by a heart purified enough to see through the veil of the present. But why would such profound spiritual insight point so consistently toward Venezuela? To the world, this is a nation defined by its vast oil reserves and strategic mineral wealth, resources that inevitably attract the intervention of global superpowers. However, under an anthropological and spiritual lens, the reason is far more significant. Venezuela represents a unique geopolitical flashpoint, a place where the world's highest material potential meets a devastating spiritual and societal collapse. It is a location of extreme pressure, where the gap between material greed and spiritual truth has reached a breaking point. Like a circuit breaker under a heavy load, this is the point of failure where a regional crisis can trigger a global chain reaction. It is the place where the fracture between the earthly and the divine is at its most fragile, making it the inevitable starting point for a shift that the rest of the world can no longer ignore. The year 2026 has brought the world to a razor's edge. In the waters off the coast of Venezuela, nuclear submarines and strategic bombers are no longer shadows of a distant past. They are the active instruments of a modern-day confrontation. With 8 battleships stationed in the region and tensions reaching a breaking point over the Maduro regime's global alliances, the air is thick with the scent of an impending storm. To the casual observer, this is a crisis of drug trafficking, oil, and mineral wealth. But to those who recall the words of Maria Esperanza, these events represent something far more significant. This is the physical manifestation of the countdown she warned about when she said, "It will start here." So why would a regional dispute in South America trigger a global disaster? The answer lies in the strategic web that binds the US, Russia, China, and Iran. As military pressure mounts against the regime in Caracas, these global powers see a direct threat to their own interests. A move in Venezuela is perceived as a move against the East, creating a domino effect that could easily ignite conflicts in Eastern Europe or the South China Sea. This military buildup is not merely a political standoff. It is the beginning of what Esperanza called it. But what exactly is it? In the vocabulary of the mystics, it is not a mere change in government or a regional skirmish. It is the chastisement, a profound spiritual purification of a world that has placed its faith in the material and forgotten the divine. The humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, where millions are unable to afford basic medicine and food, serves as a grim precursor. It is a laboratory of the soul, where the arrogance of the human ego is being stripped away. This purification is seen as a necessary medicine for a civilization that has become obsessed with material riches and the pride of self-sufficiency. The collapse of these old, corrupt systems is described as a painful but vital step for humanity. It is the moment when the world is forced to look past the oil, the minerals, and the gold, and recognize the utter fragility of any society built solely on the material. This chastisement is designed to shatter the illusions of the ego, forcing a global realization that without a spiritual foundation, all material power is but dust in the wind. As the military tension escalates in 2026, the world is being prepared for a transition that will require more than just political solutions. It will require a total reset of the human heart. The prospect of global conflict, particularly a nuclear event, often leaves individuals feeling utterly powerless. In the face of massive military maneuvers and high-stakes diplomacy in 2026, the average person feels like a mere spectator to a potential destruction. Fear becomes a paralyzing weight, a dark cloud that seems impossible to pierce. However, within the deeper laws of the spirit, there exists a profound alternative, a way to turn that very helplessness into a decisive, invisible power. This is where the paradox of suffering energy reveals itself. Both ancient wisdom and the modern science of consciousness point toward the reality of a collective human field. The fate of the world is not merely decided in war rooms. It is influenced by the emotional frequency of humanity. When suffering is met with bitterness or redirected as hatred, it only feeds the cycle of violence, acting as fuel for the fire of war. But when that same suffering is accepted with peace and consciously offered up for a higher purpose, a spiritual transformation occurs. This process is a form of spiritual nuclear fission. Instead of a chain reaction of destruction, it becomes a chain reaction of mitigation. Every moment of physical pain, every financial hardship, and every emotional betrayal can be utilized as a currency for world peace. By choosing to accept a personal cross without complaint, the believer acts as a spiritual lightning rod. This individual absorbs the static tension of the world and grounds it in grace, effectively cooling the nuclear reactor of global hatred. This is the hidden reason why the suffering of the innocent has always been seen as the most powerful force in the universe. There are those who feel especially isolated in this struggle, the roses in the valley of tears. These are the parents who pray alone while their children turn away from the faith, or the individuals who feel like spiritual failures within their own homes. It is easy to believe these tears are wasted, yet the opposite is true. In the silence of the night, when a mother or father kneels in prayer despite a broken heart, they are providing the most potent fuel for the prevention of disaster. These hidden sacrifices are the invisible shields that ward off the darkness from an entire generation. The world may look at a person in pain and see only weakness, but in the realm of the spirit, that person is a giant. A soul that offers its suffering for the good of others is participating in a cosmic defense system that no military can replicate. The individual is never a victim of the times. Rather, every soul is a protagonist in a silent war of light against darkness. By transmuting personal agony into a plea for mercy, the humble heart becomes the most essential architect of a peaceful future. It is often said that faith moves mountains, but there is a profound danger in using spirituality as a shield against reality. While the power of prayer is undeniable, it was never intended to stand alone. In the teachings of Maria Esperanza, the path to mitigating global disaster requires a perfect balance, a foundation known as the Threefold Pillar: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. These are not mere religious rituals. They are the active instruments of change. Prayer provides the spiritual oxygen, and fasting cleanses the soul's intent. However, it is almsgiving, the hands of action, that anchors this energy to the physical world. A prayer for world peace in 2026 takes on a literal, transformative power when it is joined with a concrete act of mercy. Think of the millions currently suffering in Venezuela, those caught in the crosshairs of geopolitical games and economic collapse. To pray for their safety while ignoring their hunger is a contradiction of the very faith being practiced. A single rosary carries a different weight when it is paired with a gift of bread for a neighbor or support for a refugee family. This is where faith stops being a concept and begins to save lives. Maria Esperanza's message was always one of deep, practical balance. She warned against becoming so focused on the sky that the suffering on the ground is forgotten. To offer up suffering is holy, but to alleviate the suffering of another is the ultimate act of worship. By combining the silence of prayer with the sacrifice of almsgiving, the individual moves from being a spectator of history to an architect of peace. True redemption is found when the heart speaks and the hands follow, turning the invisible power of spirit into a tangible force for good. The warnings left by Maria Esperanza were never meant to end in despair. Beyond the clouds of 2026 and the echoes of the Chastisement, she spoke of a profound dawn of light, a spiritual spring that awaits a world willing to rediscover its balance. This is not a message of panic, but a call to awakening. It is a reminder that the turmoil witnessed today is the clearing of a path for a future where justice and peace are no longer distant ideals, but lived realities. Grace and the illumination of the Holy Spirit are always present, even in the darkest hours, guiding those who seek the truth with a humble heart. To reach this dawn, a global network of peace must be built, one heart at a time. The power to shift the narrative of history lies in the small, quiet actions of the faithful. It begins with a single choice, perhaps a dedicated prayer, a period of fasting, or a hidden act of almsgiving to someone in dire need. Every sacrifice, no matter how small, becomes a vital thread in the tapestry of a peaceful world. A decision to join this movement is a decision to be a protagonist in the restoration of humanity. One can start today by committing to one of these three pillars and sharing that intention in the comments below. Together, these individual commitments form a collective shield of light against the shadows of uncertainty. There is immense hope for mankind, and it begins with the very next step taken in faith and balance.